Hello and welcome to another episode of Ready.Set.Midmarket, the podcast brought to you by MES Computing. I'm Adam Dennison, Vice President of Midsize Enterprise Services with the Channel Company. Joining me as always is my co-host, Samara Lynn, Senior Editor of MES Computing. Hi, Samara. We have two excellent guests with us today. We have Vrajesh Bhavzar. He's the co-founder and CEO of Operant.AI. And we also have Shaikh. He is the CIO and CISO with One Mesa, and he's also an MES advisory board member going on, I believe, 2 years or 2.5 years now. Welcome, Vijay and Faraz.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
So before we get started, why don't we start with you, Vijay? Just kind of give us a little bit of a background on your organization, your role there, and then we'll go over and meet Faraz, and then we'll kind of get things started around the topic of AI poisoning.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm Vrajesh. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Operant. Operant is the platform for runtime protection for AI and cloud. My background is in security and AI. I started early a career at Apple as a kernel engineer, building security, data protection, privacy, etc. Later in my career, I built the machine learning business unit for ARM and was deep in AI and machine learning before it became a huge thing here. I'm really excited to be leading the charge on securing these AI systems and the challenges that a lot of industry leaders have to face today.
Awesome. Thank you. And I am a proud user of your former products at Apple, so I'll let you know that right now. Faraz, why don't you take us in a little bit about One Mesa, and congratulations on being newly named and appointed as the CIO and CISO of One Mesa.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity as well. So One Mesa is a manufacturing, engineering, construction firm. We play in the oil and gas industries, and I've been with the company over 15 years, who's counting, right? When we're having so much fun with the growth. So my responsibilities hover around IT, OT, there's a manufacturing piece, facilities, so the operational technology plays in, and then cybersecurity as well. So that's where we get to spend a lot of time. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those new to the podcast that are unfamiliar with MES, we focus on IT leaders that are running the IT organizations within their mid-market companies. So across all verticals, healthcare, finance, construction, manufacturing, that is Samara and I's world here at MES and the Channel Company. Let's get things started on the topic. Been a couple of years now, probably going on 3 or 4 years now, where you cannot have a business technology discussion without having a discussion around AI. I think we've moved well past the definition of it. We've moved well past where people are deploying it, either pilot-wise, department-wise, or enterprise-wide. They're starting to see returns on their AI investments. But now we're starting to have a lot of discussions around the security aspect of it, and it branches off quite a bit from there. There's a lot of tentacles from the security standpoint. And I am not an expert at all, but I will say the topic of AI poisoning was one that I thought was intriguing. And when I did some research on it, it is one that's definitely a little bit scary as well. So Vijay, you're the expert in this space. Why don't you just kind of paint the picture of AI poisoning and bring it home from a business technology standpoint? Why should someone like Faraz care about this? And then we can get into how we can combat this. But what is it that's out there, and what should folks be aware of?
Yeah. Thanks for setting this up. And this is such an important topic to really dig into now. Because as you said, over the last couple of years or so, we have been trying to wrap our heads around what this new innovation cycle is about, what is going on, how do we leverage it. And in many ways, finally now we are coming about for more adoption, moving out of the labs to more production environments. Moving out of let me research what use cases this can work for, but actually applying it for real use cases, working with real data, working with real systems. And as this kind of adoption has just taken off, people are also trying to figure out, well, what does the security architecture look like? What are the different risks that we are getting exposed to? And some of them are getting caught not having thought about these things in kind of dire ways. There was an example recently about how an agentic system basically went out and deleted production databases. So there are these kinds of issues that are coming out now that people are finally figuring out, well, what are the security risks that you need to be aware of as you are bringing these AI systems to production? And this element of AI poisoning is a really big one. It spreads across the entire life cycle. So let me give more color around that, because AI poisoning is different ways to kind of see where this kind of change into the way your AI is going to operate can be injected into different stages of AI. Whether you see it as data poisoning at the time of training. So, you might be training your large models or other types of AI systems and RAG applications with the kind of data that is specific to your industry, your segment, your business. When that type of training is happening, there are many avenues how some malicious or misinformation can be part of this training environment. And think about it as these trained models come into production, there will be more ways that different types of users will interact with these models and can try to inject different instructions. Because all of this, now we are in this mode where data is how a lot of these systems are executing. When data becomes executable and when instructions are coming in this natural way, there are a lot of ways that these models are behaving that we don't have full transparency on, full discovery on, full controls on. So you have data poisoning that can happen at training time. You can have prompt injection type of attacks happen at the time of interaction with these models. And when you move into these agentic workflows, you can have tool poisoning or context poisoning kind of attacks happen. And all of these, different sub attacks and risks are in my mind, like they all kind of fall under this AI poisoning kind of set of threats.
So when we talk about security, you think about internal threats and external threats, and there's a lot of internal ones, right? There's employees behaving badly. There's employees that don't know what they're doing. They don't even know that they're behaving badly. When I hear AI poisoning and the data that's getting affected, is it something that's both internal and external, or is this something that's more an external type of a threat? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, this is a great point, because there are a lot of internal risks to be aware of in using AI and deploying it in different applications. Obviously, external risks are always around. There are a lot of ways that different businesses are under attack from different types of external entities. But in the internal sense, there are two categories in my mind where there might be just a misunderstanding or misconfiguration in the way that you are setting up these AI applications and agentic workflows. For example, if you give instructions in the wrong way, then sometimes if agents have too much permission, they will try to go access different systems that they were not supposed to. Like the developers who set up these instructions, they didn't mean for anything bad to happen, but it's just something that these agentic intelligent systems are trying to be helpful, and they go off and do something wrong. And that can have a business impact where someone's database might get access that it was not supposed to, and now you have all this different exposure. There are also a lot of these poisoning attacks that happen if you have internal threats, where some internal access might be injecting data or injecting instructions into these models, which are incorrect, or they might have implied behaviors. So, for example, sometimes we come across teams who are exposing their IT knowledge through some chatbot. Like, hey, we had all these wiki pages, like tens of thousands of these knowledge documents, or other types of information that we want to make accessible to more employees, and so we can accelerate all these IT flows and automate some of the ticketing systems and all that. And often in those chat interfaces now, if you are opening it up to thousands of employees, some people just start to kick the tires with well, what would you do if I give you this this wrong information, and have these misbehaviors happen that in fact affect the brand in a wrong way, affect the employees' experiences in other teams. So for example, if some marketing team folks went off and did something that affects GitHub, that's going to be a problem for the developers. Hey, what are the API keys that you are supposed to use to talk to some cloud provider? And sometimes if you give the instructions that are going to put you on the wrong path, then you have lost 2 months.
It's always sales and marketing, always.
That's a great point. I wanted to kind of take a step back, right? Vrajesh, you've kind of hit those key points. For mid-market companies, right, we sit at a space where we're rapidly trying to adopt AI to stay competitive, right? Often we tend to overlook those guardrails. I know we ourselves are on these multiple initiatives where we're thinking, hey, where can AI be used for customer support and engagement, right? Chatbots, your automated ticket triage and response, if you will. We talk about sales and marketing automation, generating the email content for social media posts, right? HubSpot and Salesforce, personalizing the SEO stuff, not to mention think about HR and talent management, using AI tools for resume screening, right? Writing those job descriptions. Imagine the AI tech that we are using to create and generate that content. What if it is biased, and how it is generating that content around that job description, predicting attrition, hiring success, finance and accounting. We have several initiatives where we're trying to automate certain things: invoice processing, reconciliation, expense classification, right? Fraud detection, you name it. So it lends itself across and bleeds across the entire operational functionalities of companies like us.
So, Faraz, as a practitioner, when you're thinking about new AI opportunities across your organization, at what point does your CISO hat come on, and how do you have these types of discussions with the business users, and how deep do you go with them, thinking about something like AI poisoning, which obviously has a very strong connotation to it, but how do you kind of address that and have those discussions internally, and what are your sort of checks and balances at your enterprise?
Absolutely. Great question. I think the CISO hat is always on, right? It's 24/7. There's no downtime for us. I feel as a mid-sized organization, most organizations, and I'll kind of lay a broad stroke here, most organizations are not adequately prepared for AI poisoning attacks, I feel. While that adoption of AI is accelerating across industries, I don't think that those defense practices have kept pace. I was reading up a proof point, a report where they were saying only about 20% of organizations say that they're well prepared for AI driven threats. So when come up with an initiative, if you will, hey, we need to automate this, or this seems like this is going to be a great platform to automate or bring in AI tools. One of the few things that we do is have those in-depth conversations with the end users. Okay, this is a time-consuming task. How can we bring technologies in place, and what are those pitfalls? So you've got to get into the depth of it. In terms of Rajesh talked about internal users, and there might not be any malice around that, because IT as a department is no longer a department of no. We are a department of enabling. We are a department of corporate success, growth, right? So we've got to enable that. We don't want to say, oh, that's security. So you have to walk that fine line. You've got to understand the guardrails, the swim lanes you'll have to create, sandbox it, containerize it, have comprehensive end user acceptance, UAT, before we roll out. We have a couple projects around there where we're a Microsoft shop, and we are trying to create a chat agent within our SharePoint environment. And we're thinking, wait a second, we've got HR who hosts a lot of PII stuff. We've got our safety department that posts a lot of, again, PII, background information, driving records, and medical history sometimes. If we just laid out there, imagine the kind of impact it would have if somebody were to search, hey, I want to do this, and put in the right keyword. And if that information if there's no AI poisoning, imagine the kind of impact that we have. So we always take a very conservative approach whenever we engage on using AI tools.
This is a great point. Thanks for diving into all these details. I mean, I think this is really helpful in how folks should think about uh, adoption, as well as setting in the right controls and protection in place. Often when we work with a lot of leaders and customers, they kind of also have a crawl, walk, run motion, right? Like, hey, I want to make sure I understand what we are signing up for here and then grow it to a smaller team and make sure, like, as Faraz said, about getting it to the right level of user acceptance before you just like go full on with it. But the fact is, like, all these steps are now squeezed in like a very, very shorter time, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to take 6 months to do this. It's more like 6 weeks. Sometimes we are coming across teams that, already have plans that engineering or other business organizations have decided to use agents or use these models, and security or IT might be coming in after the fact because they have already reached a point of planning that security needs to then come and act within days or weeks and put in these guardrails that he's talking about. And in many ways now, if you think about like in the kind of an older IT world, how there used to be ways to control your network, control your employee access, and make sure these corporate and cloud network firewalls are in place, so to say. Now the need for setting those kind of control points has moved into that AI layer, almost where all these API interactions are going on, all the way from employee laptops, how they interact across these different systems, often now with MCP involved, and also all these business applications that are running in different cloud environments at a layer where these API interactions are happening. You need to set the guardrails kind of deep inside these interactions, wherever these things are on Kubernetes or some form of serverless and other kind of environments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One quick point also, Adam, Samara, wanted to add is at the C-suite level, right? There's a lot of pressure for the leadership team to join the AI race. Right. So there's like, hey, what are we doing on AI adoption? So you've got to manage those expectations and define that to the C-suite that yes, while we are on it, but we've got to take a measured approach. We simply cannot fall into, yeah, everyone's adopting AI, so let's roll it out. You've got to take that step back and get a convincing narrative, if you will, to ensure that if we're going that route, we better have a measured approach rather than going full out and then having to do reputational damage control.
Or I don't want to dominate. Do you have a question you want to ask of these guys?
Well, I think Fraz made a great point. And Vijay, I want to ask you a question. It's twofold. First, how pervasive are AI poisoning attacks? Is it something you're seeing? Do you have statistics on? I mean, I'm sure it's not up anywhere near like phishing, but I'm just curious, is this something that like market IT leaders need to have their sights set on now? And then my other question is, the current security infrastructure that most, let's say, mid-sized companies have, let's say a combination of on-premise, endpoint, and then they're working with an MSSP. Are the technologies we have in place right now, SIM, SASE, can they catch these AI poisoning attacks?
So to your question about how pervasive this is, like, probably that's a question for Gartner to like come up with some statistics. But definitely we see there are so many, there is so much research coming out. There are so many demos coming out. There are so many, it's like people, this is like a cat and mouse game as it always been, right? Like as more production AI adoption is happening, more teams on the security side is also educating the market in terms of like, hey, this was possible. This other thing was possible. These other like poisoning, whether it's data poisoning, tool poisoning, context poisoning, prompt injection, like all these different things. There are real examples of very prevalent systems that are just like, there are attacks and hacks that are being shown. So it's like very, very pervasive in the day-to-day tools that everyone uses across mid-market and high enterprise. And it's not something that anyone can just shove under the rug at this point. And I think to your question, the second question is kind of like tied to that, because as I was saying earlier, like some of the older approaches around like, well, I have some network firewalls or endpoint protection, and hence I should be protected. It does not stand anymore. So I'll give you an example, right? Like, so a lot of companies are now adopting different types of AI IDEs or copilots for coding, right? So all these AI IDEs, so to say, now come with so many MCP servers. All these AI IDEs have connections into these servers that were just coming out in the open source. And there are thousands of these servers now. And these AI IDEs are running on developer laptops, making all these MCP connections to critical data, as well as having connections into all these remote servers. So, and all that is happening from these layers that are not possible to be caught by older technologies, which is where you need to find kind of the new ways to put the right guardrails and the right controls, because this is a very different way that you are interacting with these AI models and AI systems and building out these agentic workflows. So that's why, like, some of the ways that we are approaching it is like bringing.
By we, you mean Operant.
Yes. So let me talk about Operant for a minute. And I think as an industry, what I was going to say first was, as Faraz was saying, they're evaluating the entire architecture, but also that evaluation needs to be happen like super fast, right? It's not something that you can take time on. And what we are seeing is that in terms of a lot of these CISOs that are under pressure, they are coming with this attitude of like, how do I enable this? Because they do want to accelerate the growth, support the innovation, and not be like, oh, this cannot be done. And so the way to enable that is able to start enabling these use cases, enabling this innovation by protecting these systems in real time, in the runtime. So think about it where like at the actual interaction of these prompts, like what kind of poisoning attack might go into a model or what kind of response the model is giving out. You can start setting guardrails and controls and all these fine-grained interactions. We have two products that specifically target this. AI Gatekeeper is the first one that goes into AI application protection, as well as MCP Gateway, which protects all these different MCP interactions and agentic interactions. And in doing that, we bring a 3D approach, which is discovery, detection, and defense. And all these things need to come together in a single platform, because now you need to be able to discover the entire footprint, your shadow AI, all the different model footprint and interactions that are going on, and then do live detections of these poisoning attacks. And not just like prompt injection or different types of model theft, etc., but being able to detect what kind of sensitive data is passing through. What might someone be able to be successfully run some injection or do some cross-site scripting or something like that, and be able to start exfiltrate. So we can detect that in these AI systems in real time and start defending against it. We can stop those calls or even redact that data in real time, so that these AI models don't get a copy of your sensitive data, right? So as Faraz was saying, there are all these HR systems that might be talking to a chatbot. And if you can eliminate all the sensitive data going to this model, then you are much more protected. So you're supporting the innovation and accelerating that growth, but still protecting the crown jewels that are critical to your business.
Well said. I just wanted to add a little bit there, Samara, was, as a mid-market, we have limited security budgets, right? Our focus on security spend is those core IT risks, ransomware, phishing, you talked about that, endpoint security. So these AI-specific threats are still not prioritized. So we depend a lot on these third-party AI vendors, right? We rely on something because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just do not have those resources. We are looking for those SaaS platforms with embedded AI, open source model, or pre-trained LLMs, APIs, things like that, right? So that makes us so dependent on the security hygiene of the vendors. So it is very critical for us as the consumers to make sure you have those in-depth discovery sessions as you're picking those vendors.
My question is, so if someone like Faraz were to engage with an organization such as yours, is this an add-on to what they currently have, or is this something that can replace things that they currently have, so he doesn't have to add budget and he doesn't have to add tools and add security sprawl to his organization?
That's a good question. It depends. For a lot of organizations, they are in different phases of adoption of these tools and technologies. right? So often we kind of see three different phases of adoption, where first they might have some developer-based experimentation going on, whether it's on the AI model side or MCP side, and maybe they are using AI IDEs. But then they move into the phase two, where now it is clear that they need to use some AI models or AI IDEs for business critical use cases, where you might have the AI and agentic workflows, where you might have AI and agentic workflows going on. So in these different phases, someone might need to think about like, well, I need to start investing in this now. If you start early and like do it right, then you don't need to like redo a lot of tooling. Often this would be an add-on, but once you start, at least our approach with Operant is that we can solve so many different use cases for AI security, MCP security, API and Kubernetes security all together under a single platform, which is the unique solution that we are bringing to market and which allows for displacing some of the other tooling that we might have.
We only have a couple minutes left. Samara, do you have any final wrap-up questions for these gentlemen?
Maybe this is for both of you. Vijay, what is the worst case scenario that can happen to an organization with an AI poisoning attack? And Fraz, is this something that you and your peers are talking about, of things that you're concerned of as far as the other million security concerns you have to deal with every day?
I'll take first, sure. Worst case scenarios, there are many different ways that this can go. I imagine like a worst case scenario could be, some agent system getting into a lot of these critical infrastructure and, fintech organizations and creating false identities and false bank accounts. I don't know. I'm just like coming up with one, but like there are so many different things that can happen. At the scale and speed of this is like really something that folks need to think about, because within minutes, right? Like it's like seconds or minutes that these AI agents can reach a lot of your data and can start exploitation and can affect the business in a dire way. And so it's no more like, oh, I'm going to depend on my SOC and take a week to like respond to something. It's something that is happening at super fast speed and scale that needs runtime, real-time protection.
Yeah, from a user standpoint, worst case scenario of an AI poisoning is that silent, undetected compromise, right? I talked earlier about sensitive information, even with a complete case of internal misalignment, not to mention if you fall target to something that you have not thoroughly vetted. Imagine not only the financial damage to companies, the reputational damage that this can bring. That reminds me of Grok recently having some responses that were so anti-Semitic, and it was just caused so much chaos. So imagine how it can directly impact the reputation of the company that you are in. Is very critical for all, and it should be very critical for all CISOs out there. It should be a constant conversation. As I've mentioned before, there's a huge emphasis on, hey, are we on that AI train yet? We need to slow down. We need to take a deeper look and make sure the approaches that we are taking are well measured and there is a return on investment, and at the biggest level there are not these security gaps that we overlook.
Well said. I think just like the hit song from, I think, the 90s, more money, more problems, more AI, more problems, is something that we're seeing right now. So I want to thank Vijay. I want to thank you and Fraz for joining Samara and I on Ready.Set.Midmarket, uncovering certainly potential threats that are out there with AI, and more importantly, though, how to potentially combat them through strategy and technology and tools. So with that, I want to say again, thank you so much. Thanks to our audience for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Ready.Set.Midmarket.
Thank you.